Is it possible that McLaren sabotaged its own driver in the final race of the championship? What is behind Piastri's big bomb in Abu Dhabi? Today we tell you the whole truth, and what no one else dared to say. The turning point was the Qatar GP, a race that, under normal conditions, Piastri would have won without discussion. But McLaren inexplicably missed the strategy. While other teams reacted to Red Bull's changes in pace, the Woking wall faltered, keeping him on track beyond the optimal point and denying him the chance for a vital undercut. The discomfort is evident in the images. In the radio, the frustration contained. From there, the inertia was broken. The following dates were marked by repeated mistakes, poor pit stops, tactical decisions that consistently favored Norris, and a growing sense that Oscar was being relegated to the role of silent squire. The biggest blow was not only the loss of the lead. It was the emotional exhaustion that all this generated. In the final stretch of the championship, while Lando was adding podiums and capitalizing on every opportunity, Piastri was trapped in a narrative that he no longer controlled. Not because of a lack of talent, but because every decision the team made seemed to clip its wings just when it should fly higher. The fans, the media, even former drivers like Webber and Button began to talk. The question arose, is McLaren betting on a single driver? And when Abu Dhabi arrived with everything undecided, Oscar knew it. It didn't matter if he won pole or if he had the pace to beat. Decisions would be made from a wall that had already shown its cards. The final result, third place in the championship with champion statistics, was for many a confirmation of what had been happening. Piastri was the most complete driver of the year, but not the chosen one. Now, with the benefit of perspective, that first block of the season takes on symbolic weight. It represents not only what was, but what could be. The story of a driver who did everything right and still ended up relegated. Because in modern Formula One, talent is not always enough. Sometimes the internal politics of the team weigh more than the tenths on the court. And that, in Piastri's case, is what hurts the most. The start was devastating. Pole position in changing conditions, victory on pure pace and error-free execution. From that moment on, the paddock realized that they were not looking at a promising driver. They were looking at a serious contender, someone who, with just 1 year of experience, was already prepared to shoulder the weight of a championship fight. The following races reinforced that perception. While Norris alternated between brilliant weekends and less consistent ones, Piastri maintained an upward trend. On high downforce tracks, on street circuits, in mixed conditions, its versatility was one of its greatest weapons. One of the most symbolic moments occurred in Canada. Piastri, with better pace all weekend, was instructed not to attack Norris in the second half of the race, when he had fresher tires and a clear window to try. The excuse was the protection of the double podium. The reality was different, a denied opportunity to fight face to face. Oscar obeyed. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. But it became clear that strategic decisions were beginning to prioritize one name over the other. The breaking point came later, in Qatar. In that race, the difference was not just tactical. It was symbolic. Piastri was kept on track with a strategy that was clearly no longer working, while Norris received an early stop that allowed him to overtake both Oscar and other direct rivals. It was a difficult play to justify from a technical point of view. The subsequent analysis, both from experts and specialized media, agreed on one thing. That was the race that changed the championship. Not only because of the lost points, but because the perception of equality was broken. At that time, Piastri's mental state began to deteriorate. It was not reflected in public complaints or controversial statements. It was seen in his body language, in the measured but empty responses to the media. In every "we continue working as a team," there was a subtext of disappointment. Because while he continued to believe in a common project, decisions increasingly pointed to an internal hierarchy that no longer placed him as the centerpiece. And yet he continued to perform. Even when things seemed to be against him, Piastri maintained a very high level of driving. He was competitive in rankings, consistent in career, minimized errors. And that made the contrast even more painful. A driver who did everything well, but who did not receive the same support. And the most ironic of all was the final result. He finished third in the championship, behind his own teammate and Verstappen, who had less consistency but more technical support. Statistically, Piastri had one of the best seasons for a second driver in recent F1 history. But emotionally, it was devastating. This block of history is not just about numbers. It's about the invisible dynamic that defines championships, of internal politics, of ego management, about the trust that a team decides to place or not place in its driver. And that's what makes Piastri's case in 2025 so powerful. We are not facing a drop in performance. We are facing a fall in support. And in Formula One, that can be more decisive than any tenth per lap. The atmosphere in Abu Dhabi was electric. Not because of the traditional spectacle of the Yas Marina circuit or because of the fireworks that usually close the season, but because the World Championship was reaching its limit. 3 drivers with real options for the title. Lando Norris as the leader, Max Verstappen as the main pursuer, and Oscar Piastri as the third in contention. But with mathematical possibilities and a combative spirit that had resisted the blows of the last races. It was the perfect ending to a year of high tension, but also the ideal scenario for a silent fracture. The classification made it clear that the 3 candidates were in a position to fight. Verstappen took pole, Norris was second, and Piastri secured third place. Just a few tenths separated them. The MCL39 was in top form and the RB21 was showing its teeth once again. But it was in the strategy, not on the track, where the true outcome was written. And for Oscar, that script was a silent sentence. Even before the traffic light went out, McLaren had already defined its move. Split strategies. Norris would start on medium tires, looking to attack Verstappen at the start and put pressure on the first stint. Piastri, on the other hand, would start hard with the objective, as explained by Andrea Stella, of conditioning Max's strategy, forcing Red Bull to cover and opening a favorable tactical window for Lando. In theory, a chess move. In practice, a choice that turned Piastri into a tool, not a protagonist. The race began with that implicit tension. Piastri did not have the same initial pace as his rivals. His choice of tires left him vulnerable, forced to hold on, to resist. Every lap that passed without attacking opportunities was further confirmation of his status within the team. As Norris and Verstappen traded lap times, Oscar remained in tactical limbo with no option to fight for himself. Everything was designed so that his race window would indirectly benefit the championship leader. And in a sport like Formula One, where team orders are often disguised as strategic decisions, nonverbal language takes on all the weight. Piastri received few instructions over the radio. Nothing explosive. No direct order not to attack. But the subtext was obvious. Keep pace, conserve tires, bide your time. A moment that never came. A moment that was not meant to come. Most disturbing to many observers was that even when Piastri had clean air and fresher tires at the end of the stint, he was not allowed to put pressure on Norris. The differences in rhythm were minimal. The conditions were ideal for him to attempt a comeback. But the silence of the wall was deafening. There was no push. There was no motivation. Management only. And for a driver who had come into that race with a real shot at the title, that was a form of tactical amputation. At the end of the race, the gesture said it all. While Norris celebrated his championship with the team and Verstappen sportingly assumed his second place, Piastri walked towards the playpen without a single expression of joy. His responses to the media were measured, diplomatic, irreproachable, but cold. Clinics. He limited himself to congratulating the team and his teammate and reiterating that he was proud of their season. Not a word of satisfaction. Not a phrase that hid genuine pride. And that is where the real explosion is found. It wasn't a sound bomb. There were no inflammatory statements or tense press conferences. But the explosion was internal and much more powerful. Because what happened in Abu Dhabi was the culmination of a series of decisions that had been slowly eroding the relationship between driver and team. A driver who, from the first race, showed that he was ready to be champion. And a team that, when the key moment came, did not trust him. This block is not just about a poorly executed strategy. It is about a silent betrayal. How, in modern Formula One, a driver's morale can be destroyed without saying a single word. And how a championship can be lost not only on the track but in the meeting room, on the radio, on the wall, and in decisions that are disguised as tactics, but that are ultimately pure politics. The most disconcerting thing about this whole story is that Oscar Piastri never raised his voice. He never made a public complaint. He never attacked McLaren. There were no slamming doors, no inflammatory statements or controversial interviews. It wasn't necessary. Because when betrayal is silent, words become unnecessary. It was a bomb that never exploded, but whose shockwave still resonates in the paddock. And in the modern era of Formula One, silence is a political tool. When a pilot limits himself to responding with empty phrases, with automatic thanks, with empty smiles, he is saying much more than he seems. What happened in Abu Dhabi was not an emotional reaction or a momentary outburst. It was the final expression of a fracture that had been brewing throughout the season. An accumulation of micro-decisions, gestures, strategic priorities, and implicit hierarchies that ended up displacing Piastri from his legitimate place as a title contender. Leave your answer in the comments what you think about all this.